Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. This week, in author Willie Carver Jr.'s new book, he reconsiders a negative childhood experience with a neighborhood girl who might have just been looking for a friend.
That got me thinking a lot about marginalized groups in Appalachia that frankly a lot of people would love to get rid of, and they can't because we are the context of their own story. Their story doesn't exist without us.
A southwestern Virginia community rang the alarm after more and more of its children were diagnosed with cancer. A local journalist is trying to unravel the cause.
I had just seen so many posts on social media, so many people asking me if I had heard about, the uptick in childhood cancer cases in Scott County. It feels really close to my heart.
And the city of Asheville has a new crusading reporter. He's a puppet.
Here's a script that I'm going to do for a local supermarket chain that has a lot of abandoned properties around town. If I say this, could they sue me?
You'll hear these stories and more this week inside Appalachia.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by Festival Charleston, When a City Becomes a Work of Art, May 22nd through the 31st, offering River Queen Cruises, the new Festival Family Cookout on Memorial Day, Dance Festival, and the Capitol Street Art Fair. Details at festivalcharleston.com.
Welcome inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams. Kentucky writer and educator Willie Edward Taylor Carver Jr. has a new book. It's a mosaic novel that draws from his upbringing and his experiences as a gay man in Appalachia. The title is Tore All to Pieces, and it weaves together poetry and short stories into a narrative about people and place. Bill Lynch spoke with Carver about the book and about the joys of bologna gravy.
A dumb question, probably one you've got before. So your name is one of the longest names that I think I've encountered in a while. Willie Edward Taylor Carver Jr. I mean, it's like what, 10, 13, like it's like a bunch of syllables.
It's a lot.
So how is it you have such a long name and use it?
Andy Bashir called me the man of many names, the when he announced Teacher of the Year. So I've never lost it after that in public facing things. But the Taylor, I had I don't want, calling her a French professor seems so wrong because she was a friend. She was a second mother to me, who was so influential in my life that I took her last name. My husband took hers as his primary last name. So that's the Taylor. I thought I was Edward my entire life because my mom said it was. And then at 18, I got my birth certificate and it said Ed. And I was like, Mom, is my name Ed or Edward? And then she was like, it was 1983. You have no idea how much drugs they gave us. I had to go manually change it. Added the Taylor, added the word. I had been Willie Ed Carver Jr. named after my dad. And so I said to this guy at the Social Security office, can I keep Junior even though I'm changing my name? And he goes, buddy, you can do whatever you want. And I took that as like almost biblical. I can do whatever I want. I can be Junior and the first ever. So yeah, I kind of keep them because I fought the government for half of them, and I love too many people they represent not to keep them.
That's great. Would you like to read something?
Yes. I'd love to read The Fat Truth from Tore All to Pieces. This is the introductory poem that sort of sets the tone for everything and precedes the prologue. The Fat Truth. I could use adverbs and maybe even begin my sentence with some limp preposition, even smother my who with an M that tucks around the lips of O, that folds around the hole until only folks whose hanging indent is a clean measured half inch might feel brave enough to put my words in their mouth. But restraint ain't that sexy to folks who use real butter. May my words be full fat and high cholesterol. May they flare out, plump with meaning's cream, saturated in color and light and cheap pork rind, the taste of which will matter, I promise you, since I want the weight of me coating mouths. And whether they swallow me or spit me out, their tongues will be thick with my lingering lipids.
So let's talk about the unusual format of the book, which goes back and forth between, story and poetry. How did you arrive at that particular form?
Yeah, there are a few reasons. One is I arrived naturally. I was climbing a mountain in Montreal, got winded, had to stop. And when I say mountain, this is like a pretty easy walk. It's a beginner's walk. And these women, 30 years older than me, just breezed by wearing high heels, smoking, and talking at normal speeds. And I had this real clear memory of being about 9 years old, pushing bicycles with my cousins or my cousin, because we were too fat to get these bikes to the head of the holler. And this little girl, this little redheaded, mean youngin, looks at us and goes, "And bikes work better when you sit on them," and like made fun of us. So we hated her, of course. I never saw this little girl again the rest of my life, just those 30 seconds. So I wrote a poem about the experience when I get to the top of the hill. And then that little girl was buzzing, being like, "You need to tell my story. You need to tell my story." Eventually, I wrote it. And I had this weird thing happen where I could imagine that both of these are true, even though I didn't know this little girl. This story could be real. And the same moment happens in both the story and the poem, but I can't pull the little girl from that story and put her in this poem. And I can't pull the little girl in the poem and put her in that story. And it made me think a lot about how often other people are sort of the background and the texture of our stories. But they are so complete in their own right that we can't really pull them into ours. And that got me thinking a lot about marginalized groups in Appalachia that, frankly, a lot of people would love to get rid of, and they can't because we are the context of their own story. Their story doesn't exist without us. And so in this book, there are 10 separate stories, and the same characters are in the background of everyone else's stories, and you can't pull anybody. And then there are poems that introduce everything. One, I think it's to naturally build that texture. And two, I think anyone who reads the poem followed by the story will see the connection between the two. Often there's a turn or there's a theme. And I just want to remind Appalachia, poetry is yours. I think sometimes there's this idea that poetry is something a little academic, a little frou-frou, a little snobby, and it's none of those things. It can be in the hands of the wrong people, but it's ours as much as anybody else's.
The people and places in Tore All to Pieces seem familiar. I think I lived part of it. You mentioned the poem and kind of it was based on something that happened to you. So the question becomes, what part of the story is you? How much of you is in this? And, are you somewhere in the characters?
In some ways of answering, I could say 100%. In that, when you talk about meaning making, I could say this as a foreign language teacher. There's one way to do it where you give someone the French word bonjour and tell them that it means hello, but it doesn't mean hello. It means bonjour. It's a completely different word in a different language. And when you try to gloss, no one learns anything because their starting point is always going to be French or English. But on the other hand, if I just show 40 people saying bonjour to each other, if I say bonjour to 40 people, they can build meaning from that texture. And so the people here are built from the texture of my entire life, people I have known and loved. I think that's why, even when you just now said, I feel like I know these people, Dr. TJ West, who's a brilliant writer in West Virginia, said that it was unsettling to him because sometimes he felt like not only does he know these people intimately, but sometimes he felt like he was these people. And I'll say this, the honoriest characters are me. The meaner the character, the better, more likely it's me. Not because I think I'm ornery and mean, but because I do think if I'm going to write about people who are flawed, I owe them love. I've learned one thing in this world, it's how to love myself, because I was told by so many people that I didn't deserve it. And so when I'm writing about a character who's dealing with drug abuse issues, or when I'm writing about a character who's wrapped up in religious zealousness that harms people, I want to make sure I'm doing it from a place of love. So I often imagine myself, I'd rewind my entire life and make different choices and end up in a different place. And that helped a lot.
Novelists say things. What are you saying about the people of Eastern Kentucky, of Appalachia?
they're already worthy of all the dignity and love, and they don't owe anybody anything. I think that's one thing that I want to say. So many stories that I know sort of need a redeemer, right? Like, let me prove how smart I am so that now I can be worthy enough, right? It's almost like the beginning presupposition is that people from Appalachia somehow aren't worthy and they can prove themselves, and then we can borrow from whatever they're proven from to like paint other people with it. And I don't want to do that. For example, a lot of my characters are fat, and a lot of my characters are probably, not eating the best foods. That's because in real life, a lot of the people that I know and love are fat and they're not eating the best foods because structurally they can't afford them. And I don't want to tell a story where my character has to engage with this structure and decide to prove that food isn't healthy. I don't care about my characters having to do that. It's not that that question doesn't matter. It's just I don't want their humanity to constantly revolve around them having to solve a problem that they didn't cause. So, yes, there's drug abuse and yes, there's obesity, but those aren't problems I'm aiming to solve any more than my cousin has to solve that to prove he's worthy, right? Or to prove that his story matters. His story matters because it matters. The woman at the dollar store's story matters because it matters.
Something you brought up the Appalachian Studies Conference, which I'm going to pin you on this one. The subject of bologna gravy. Do people besides me actually make that? I thought that was something that we just did when I was a kid.
I had a colleague. He made the best dang bologna gravy on earth and would bring it in a giant crock pot once a month to our faculty meetings. And some people, because I live in Montgomery County, which is according to the ARC Appalachia, but depending upon what part of it you're standing in, either bluegrass or Appalachia. And some people there had never eaten bologna gravy, and even they had to become believers because it's just that good.
Is there a secret to the sauce? I mean, how do you make it good? We only made it, barely passable, but it went on bread pretty good.
It does go on very pretty good. I think personally that just because it's bologna gravy doesn't mean you can't fry it in bacon grease. If you got enough left over, that's what I've always seen it fried in.
As a queer Appalachian and an educator, a writer,
Mhm.
what's very important to you right now?
Um, Making sure that we are spending the money that all of us are paying in taxes on people whose lives could be made infinitely better as opposed to giving it to the wealthy. Queer youth rights, period. I think children can't lobby, so they're always an easy group to pick on. So those two pretty much above all other things right now. And what's interesting is, as political a person as I seem to be, I'm very uninterested. I'm interested in people being given dignity. And in America in 2026, that means I'm talking about political things because I'm talking about giving people dignity. And it's often coming from politicians who, instead of just doing their job and making lives better for us, are wasting everyone's time and energy trying to stoke the fights among people who have no reason not to like each other.
So what comes next?
What comes next, I hope, is us talking about this book, only because I really want to get progressive people talking about rural folks, talking about Appalachia, realizing that it's so much more complex than national political discourse gives it credit for being. I've also got a Mothman novel in the works. I've got a Mothman collection of poems also about to come out. The Mothman novel's going to go before University Press of Kentucky in just a couple of weeks. So cross fingers there. North Meridian Press has the collection of poems. It's going to be called The Red Ahead, and it is some of the strangest stuff I've ever written. But I adore Mothman, and this sort of imagines Mothman from a religio theocracy. I don't know. There's so much happening here. It's spiritual, it's queer, it's Appalachian, it's working class, it's hot pocket, it's all the things.
Willie Edward Taylor Carver Jr., thank you very much for being on Inside Appalachia.
Thank you, Bill. I appreciate it so much. It's always a pleasure.
The book is Tore All to Pieces. It's published by the University Press of Kentucky. Hospitals in rural America are closing at an alarming pace, and Tennessee has the highest closure rate. WPLN in Nashville is looking at the trend and what's being done to reverse course. Reporter Catherine Sweeney went to Linden, a Tennessee town that watched its hospital go dark, but is now on the path to recovery.
Linden is a river town, home to fewer than 1,000 people, about 90 miles west of Nashville. It's in Perry County, one of the poorest counties in the country, according to state data, but it still had an operating hospital, even though in nearby counties they were shuttering. Mayor Wes Ward has been in Linden his whole life.
There was something definitely wrong somewhere, some red tape, some bureaucracy, something that was causing the closure of so many. I mean, it wasn't just a coincidence that all these small communities lost their hospital at one time.
In Waverly, about 40 miles north of Linden, the hospital nearly closed. The one in McKenzie, 70 miles northwest, wasn't as lucky. It did close. So did the one in Parsons, 20 miles west.
We were sitting right in the middle of all that, so yeah, we knew that it was a ticking time bomb, you know.
The bomb went off around Thanksgiving of 2020. The Perry County Community Hospital was one of the closures that made Tennessee the state with the most rural hospital closures per capita in the country. More than a dozen rural hospitals have closed since 2010, and even now, reports indicate 9 more are teetering on the edge of closure. For Ward, losing Perry County's hospital was personal. A few years ago, he was feeling pretty rough after clearing some land on a bush hogger. Later that night at home, he passed out.
I wake up, feel like somebody's standing on my chest, keys, stuff laying on the floor. Get up and drive out to the hospital, walk in. Everybody's like, "What are you doing here? I had a heart attack."
How do you think it would have gone if the hospital wasn't open?
I probably wouldn't be sitting here. So I'm probably a walking testament to rural health.
Technically, Perry County residents can get to a hospital in Jackson, about 60 miles away, or they could go a bit farther, an hour and a half, to Murray Regional or one of the major hospitals in Nashville. That's a long way to drive if you're sick or even need basic health care. Many don't have a car. Mayor Ward says there's an arguably even more common struggle, having an unreliable car.
They know they can take one of these back roads into town. And, too, a lot of people have never drove on the interstate and won't drive on the interstate. And, they've never been to Nashville. They've never been out of Perry County. And they'll let a small problem turn into a big problem.
That's for locals. Lacking a hospital can be dangerous for other people, too. One thing about rural Tennessee, it's pretty. People want to be outside there. Perry County's no exception. The Buffalo River runs right through Linden. It draws canoers, and its winding scenic roads draw thousands of tourists seeking other outdoor adventures, like riding motorcycles.
That first year the hospital closed, I remember it seemed like we had a motorcycle wreck every weekend that whole first year, But at least that's behind us now.
That's because Linden residents have their hospital again. It's reopened due to the efforts of Braden Health.
It's more than just one specific thing that causes that many hospitals to fail.
Kyle Kopech is the COO of Braden Health. The company is on a mission to change policies and attitudes so that failed rural hospitals can reopen and stay open.
Our perspective is it's some of the outdated legislation. It's some bad actors mixed in that eroded trust. It's very bad management. And it's, most importantly, just the community does not want to go there anymore.
Braden has now reopened 4 hospitals in rural Tennessee, Perry County being the latest.
Perry County Hospital, it's back. Thank you.
Much of Linden turned out for the ribbon cutting to reopen Perry County in September.
We have a brand new lab with all state-of-the-art equipment. You can peek in there and see.
Haley Sanders is the hospital's new CEO.
We're here today not just to mark a new beginning and not just opening a new hospital, but to restore trust and dignity and care to a community that needs care so much.
People started coming in for treatment, in many cases offering a glimpse of what was happening when the hospital was closed for so many years. Sanders describes one of the patients that stuck with her.
She told me that she didn't want to go to the hospital in the next county, so she waited 5 days because she had kept hearing on the radio that the hospital was going to open. So she waited 5 days for the hospital to open. So by the time she got here, she was so sick, she was, really close to dying. These people just need to know, it's open and ready to take care of all their needs, no matter what they are.
Tennessee's current rural health landscape is plagued by hospital closures, reduced medical services, and worker shortages. But Perry County Community Hospital sends a message. Rural health care is not a lost cause.
In rural America, everyone knows small towns, word spreads, then patients start coming in. And then we work really hard to treat them well. And then they tell more people that they were treated right. And that's the secret for us for building community support. It's a very slow thing.
Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
Coming up, there's an uptick in childhood cancer cases in a southwestern Virginia community. We speak with a journalist looking for answers. You're inside Appalachia. I'm Mason Adams.
Support for Inside Appalachia is provided by the Charleston, West Virginia Convention and Visitors Bureau, Charleston WV, where scenic trails and on-the-water adventure meet cultural experiences in the capital city of West Virginia. Your adventure begins here at charlestonwv.com.
A cancer diagnosis can be devastating and tragic when it happens to a child. But when multiple childhood cancer cases appear in a community, well, folks start asking questions. That's what's happening in Scott County, Virginia. Scott County has seen a dramatic rise in childhood cancer diagnoses. Marina Waters is a reporter who's been covering the issue. Marina Waters, thank you so much for coming on Inside Appalachia to speak with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Your story in the Virginia Mercury is headlined, "In Southwest Virginia, Scott County parents search for answers amid children's cancer diagnoses." What's going on?
Well, it seems like there's a lot going on in Scott County with this. The community has really gathered together and kind of said, hey, we've got an uptick of childhood cancer cases here. It's not a very large county. It's about, give or take, 500 miles. And so you've got a lot of kids there that have gotten these cancer diagnoses. So the community's basically gathered together and said, hey, we've seen an uptick. What's happening? Why is this happening? So the community's really gotten together and said, hey, we have an issue here. It's been all over social media, things like that. And so families have kind of gathered together to say, hey, let's take a closer look at what's going on here.
Megan Smith is an oncology nurse who plays an important role in your story. Can you tell me about Megan and what she's been doing?
Megan's been spearheading this whole thing, really. She has been such an important part of this. She's gathered data. She has, talked to families. She's helped gather resources so people can kind of know what's going on with these families, and shared GoFundMe links and whatnot. And Andrick's family kind of found out that Andrick might have cancer thanks to some of Megan's posts about the symptoms and what to look for. So that's been a really important thing that she's done in addition to everything else. So she also started the Southwest Virginia Mountain Valley Coalition that's been really helpful to try to get some testing done, raising money for some of these independent tests for air quality, water quality, things like that, to kind of hopefully get some answers for the families out in Southwest Virginia.
Can you kind of give me a little gist of what she thinks might be going on and why she started tracking this information?
Sure. There are a lot of theories out there, and no one really knows for sure at this point, but they've tested for radon. That's something the state used to really test for. And They've tested for water and air quality, all sorts of things like that. So there's some people that believe that it could be the water. But the families I spoke to told me that they're on well water. So it does make you wonder, could it be something in the ground? Could it be pesticides? That's something Megan and I talked about. It's a very rural area. Southwest Virginia and Scott County is very rural. So it could be some sort of pesticide, or, could this be the impacts of something that happened decades ago or several years ago that we're just kind of seeing the impacts from it? Something else that's kind of been interesting that Megan mentioned was there have been some cases of autoimmune disorders that have cropped up that look like a cancer. They appear as a cancer, maybe have some symptoms like that. Then, come to find out it's autoimmune. So could that be related to these cancer diagnoses? So I think it's a big question mark as of right now, but there are a lot of theories too. So we're not really sure.
So it sounds like this community took their findings to the Virginia Department of Health. What was the response from the state?
So the state conducted a study to see if Scott County has a cancer cluster. According to the CDC's definition, Scott County isn't considered a cancer cluster. Megan and some other community members really pushed for that study to be done from the Virginia Cancer Registry and the Virginia Department of Health. Eventually, they did that study, and they found that it's not considered a cancer cluster. They had the town hall meeting as well in Scott County, and basically they told the community what they had found and the fact that it's not a cancer cluster. So from there, you had some frustration from parents and community members. I think the main frustration comes from the data lag. So it seemed like the most cases in the past few years have come up in 2024 and 2025. That data was not included in the study. So that was kind of the frustration that a lot of parents had. And you'll see that throughout the story from different quotes from different families and people that I spoke to. That was kind of a big question of, why isn't this data included? So according to Megan Smith, since 2023, there have been 14 children diagnosed with cancer of some sort in Scott County. 2 of those cases were in 2023, 5 were in 2024, and 7 in 2025. So just hearing those numbers, it sounds like it's going up. It's trending upward in numbers. So the question is, why aren't the 2024 and 2025 numbers included? So I asked the Virginia Department of Health, and they explained that any provider has up to about 6 months to report a cancer diagnosis. They want to have that room to really make sure they have the numbers correct. You can also have duplicate numbers of the same case, things like that. So they kind of said that they need a little more time to get all of the numbers as correct as they can get it. That's kind of been where they're at. So the Virginia Department of Health, they are working to get those numbers, and I believe they should have them in 2026. So that's something that the community is definitely looking ahead for.
I can understand why they're frustrated, though, with that data lag. I noticed in your story, it mentions that some of these families are turning to GoFundMe to raise money for these treatments, which can get really expensive. So can you tell me a little bit about some of the families you spoke to and what's the latest there?
It was a pleasure to talk to these families. I mean, they are in such a tough season of their life, and they were so gracious to talk to me and, kind of even think back on those really tough times. That really meant a lot to me. It's not lost on me that they would share, and trust me with their stories. So that always means a lot to me as a journalist. But I talked to 2 families. They're both in Scott County. So this was Andrick Williams and Avon Culbertson. And I talked to their mothers. So Kelsey Williams was the first mom I talked to, and her son is 10 years old. His name is Andrick. He's out of Fort Blackmore, Virginia. Andrick was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma, which is an aggressive bone cancer. Andrick is very much in the middle of his treatment. Him and his mom have been in St. Jude for quite a while. And Kelsey shared with me they are actually reassessing his case, that he was diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma to begin with, but they are looking to see if it's metastatic Ewing sarcoma, which could be a little more widespread and maybe call for a different sort of treatment. Kelsey is also she's a single mom and has a son that is at home in Scott County with her mom. Then I talked to Avon Culbertson's mom, Ashley Culbertson. Avon was diagnosed with B-cell leukemia in 2024, and she is hoping to ring the bell that says, hey, we're done with cancer. We're done with our treatment in October if everything goes right. So that family is really, really hoping that they can end their cancer journey and come back home. It was kind of nice to talk to two families that went through a very similar struggle, of course, and had been in St. Jude and had kind of very similar questions about what's causing this issue in the county and things like that, but are also at different kind of points in their journey. So it was nice to speak to both of them.
You know, Marina, your work did this story as a freelancer, but you've spent some time in that area, editing and writing for the local newspapers. You were rooted in your community there in Northeast Tennessee, southwestern Virginia. Can you talk a little bit about that rootedness in the community and maybe how that helped you to cover this story versus, somebody swooping in to cover it from, say, one of the East Coast publications? You know your community. You got to spend time with these folks, over an extended period. Can you discuss that a little bit?
Sure. So I live probably, I'd say 15 minutes maybe from Gate City, very, very close to Scott County. I have some family members out that way. My family, we spend a lot of time out in Scott County. We love the Carter Fold and just kind of the beautiful outdoors in Scott County. So I'm very, very familiar with it. And I had just seen so many posts on social media, so many people asking me if I had heard about, the uptick in childhood cancer cases in Scott County. It feels really close to my heart. And I think there's nothing like local coverage when you have a local journalist that is working hard to cover the community, but also tell the story and not exploit it. It's important to remember that you are being trusted with these stories, like the Culbertsons and the Williams. They've definitely trusted me with those stories. But also this community has really been grateful for any coverage. They've really been excited to see that people are asking questions and that it's reaching beyond just their neighbors. It's reaching other parts of the county, of the state, of, the region, of the world, hopefully, to kind of help them get some answers. I think that's kind of where they're at right now. They're wanting any answers they can get. And I think they see that awareness is maybe a way that they could get some help. From my perspective, I think Northeast Tennessee can be a little forgotten about. And I think Southwest Virginia, it seems the same way. It seems like it's forgotten about. It seems like this little corner of the world that it might not be the same as the top of the state or other areas of the country. And I think it feels a little forgotten about. So I think it's really important for me to share the stories of the people that are here and share the stories of home, really, and kind of talk about what's happening, what's going on, and kind of share those untold stories. That's important to me for sure.
Marina Waters, thank you for reporting this story, and thank you for coming on Inside Appalachia to speak with us about it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
That was Tennessee journalist Marina Waters. We've posted a transcript of this interview and a link to her story for the Virginia Mercury. You can find them on our website, wvpublic.org. Fruit trees in much of central Appalachia are just coming off their spring bloom. Their fruit won't be ripe until late September, early fall. But some varieties of apples show up early. Some folks call them June apples, June transparent apples, or even early transparents. The growing season and flavor of this fruit set it apart, and generations of Appalachians have kept these apple trees alive. In one of our early folkway stories from 2020, reporter Connie Kitts discovered that these early apples were in danger of disappearing.
The early June transparent apple is a small, green, tangy fruit that grows in few places in the world, two of which are in southwest Virginia and southern West Virginia. It blossoms and buds in the spring, putting it at risk of a late frost. This past spring, neighborhood kids in Bluefield, Virginia awaited the apples that survived May's late freeze.
Can you help us get those 3 apples? Can you help?
They're not ready to fall yet.
It's a big one.
She told me that.
Can I have one? Can I have it? I think this is an apple. It has sour powder in it.
The skin of the apple is paper thin. The flesh inside is crisp and white. Susie Webb is a retired postal worker who grew up eating these apples. Her late father, Frank Johnston, had 2 well-known trees in the area. Susie says her dad, Frank, loved the apple's distinct sour taste.
No, he never wanted it later when it was ripe. He always wanted them when they were green, and he used to say they had to be green enough to make a pig squeal.
There's about a 3-week window to pick the apples before they rot. It's common to pick them green. That's when the apple skin is thinnest, so peeling the apple isn't necessary to make applesauce or fried apples. The skin just cooks down. Georgie Durham, who's 90 years old, remembers eating off these trees in Bluefield in the 1940s and 50s when they were popular backyard trees.
And I believe the skin was the reason called transparent, because the skin was so thin on the apples. You could almost see through them.
As the apples mature and turn slightly yellow, the skin toughens, and that's when people peel the apple. But the flesh inside becomes sweeter with a mealy, crumbly texture, and Georgie says this is when it's excellent for making applesauce.
Well, I do know one thing. The early transparent, you couldn't beat it. It's number one, Betty, for cooking, for applesauce, for, pies, anything you wanted to make.
The early June transparent apple tree is not native to this region or this country. In 1870, the United States Department of Agriculture imported it from Russia and the Baltic states, both places with cold climates. Consumer horticulture specialist Mira Bulatovich-Danilovich is with West Virginia University Extension. She says Central Appalachia has more in common with the Baltics than you might think.
The nearest neighbor to the Baltic countries is Finland, just to get a perspective. So whatever West Virginia lacks in latitude, it actually gains in altitude. Believe it or not, we have quite similar climates.
In fact, both Bluefield, West Virginia and Bluefield, Virginia are at some of the higher elevations in the region. So in these colder climates, the early transparent began to thrive around the 1930s. But Mira says there's possibly a more important factor she's seen in the survival of heirlooms like these. They become neighborhood trees, and the community knows the apple's distinct taste. It becomes something people grow up with and share.
Tradition is the main reason why we still have a thriving production of some of these heirloom varieties. People remember what their grandparents and great-grandparents had, and they want that apple to survive, to be preserved for the next generation too.
And part of that next generation is Rebecca Perry and her husband, Willie. They live in Bluefield, West Virginia, near early transparent trees that their families picked for years. Becky and Willie like to cook fresh transparents for breakfast just like they had when they were young.
Okay, my apples are all washed, diced, and cut up. I'm getting ready so you can hear the sizzling of the apples going into the pan to fry. Have my biscuits in the oven. Do you hear that? They're ready, and you put a little bit of water in there.
And to make that baby food thin applesauce, Becky says wait till the apples ripen more, peel the skin off, slice, and cook in a pot with just a scant bit of water. Down the road from the Perrys, back on the Virginia side, is Lonnie Johnson, a longtime local with an early transparent tree. He bought his property 30 years ago, and the tree was neglected. He says these trees can get unruly without regular maintenance.
It wasn't taken care of. Everything was all ran down and everything, so I started getting it trimmed, and I had it trimmed, and I put fertilizer around it. It took off, man.
Ever since, Lonnie and his wife slice and freeze the apples to have them year-round.
There's nothing better than snow flying and good morning cooked apples with biscuits. Nothing like it. It makes springtime just pop right in your head.
But lately, there aren't as many producing transparent trees as there used to be. The sale of farms, new construction, and property abandonment are all factors, Lonnie says, as well as aging trees and lack of care.
It's a dying breed. That's the sad part about it. That's the reason I want to get couple more started.
Someone who's eager to help out is Junior Crockett, who owns a business just down the road. He grew up in the 1970s with a family orchard that was later cut down. So his hobby is finding and saving some of the area's old apple trees by grafting them. He uses a notching and taping technique to attach part of an old tree to a new one.
So it's not that hard to do. You make your own trees. That's the only way you get a true to parent apple.
Next spring will be Junior's first attempt at grafting an early June transparent tree.
I just like it because it's therapeutic. I love history, and that's part of history. Only thing for me, I don't have a young apprentice to take over to learn.
Meanwhile, the kids at Lonnie Johnson's home church are picking up his love of the early June transparent apple.
I have a little boy in the Sunday school, and he calls me Apple. Every time he sees me, he wants me to pick him up, and then he'll look at me and say, Apple. So his mother said that he renamed me. My name is Apple now.
God didn't make little green apples, and it don't rain in Indianapolis in the summertime.
And it turns out God didn't make too many little green apples this year. Not many blossoms survived the unusually late spring freezes. Tree owners in the region say there were only about a handful of smaller, pickable apples on each tree. So you can bet they're guarding the apples in their freezer from last year. For Inside Appalachia, I'm Connie Kitts in Bluefield, Virginia.
God didn't make little green apples, and it don't snow in Minneapolis when the winter comes.
For decades, we've known smoking can lead to lung cancer. Public health messages usually focus on personal behavior, that the only way to prevent lung cancer is for people to stop smoking. But new research finds a connection between lung cancer and air pollution, particularly in urban areas. The Allegheny Front's Julie Grant spoke with researchers about reducing cancer rates through environmental policy.
Epidemiologist Doug Myers of Boise State University and his colleagues have been trying to see if there are factors beyond smoking that lead to lung cancer, a disease that can take 20 years to develop. So they designed a study to take smoking out of the equation.
So what if no one smoked 20 years ago? What would cancer rates look like today?
They looked at cancer rates in over 1,000 counties nationwide and simulated a scenario where everyone stopped smoking. On average, lung cancer rates were cut by more than half, but the results varied widely. In some counties, lung cancer rates plunged, but in others, there was only a modest drop.
And then immediately the question is, well, why? What's going on in those counties?
This is study co-author Dave Kriebel of the University of Massachusetts Lowell.
And a very important part of the answer appears to be air pollution.
Using data from the Environmental Protection Agency, the researchers found that in urban areas with higher pollution levels, cancer rates remained higher than in places with cleaner air. In addition to radon, which has a known link to lung cancer, they found a connection between cancer and the air pollutants polycyclic organic matter, a class of chemicals that form during combustion, like at U.S. Steel's Coke plant in Allegheny County. In addition, Kriebel says they were surprised to see the connections between lung cancer and benzene, as well as diesel exhaust, like from cars and trucks.
This is one of the first times we've really been able to see that it is a contributor to keeping some urban counties having high lung cancer rates.
In related research, they found that Allegheny County was one of only 53 counties nationwide with a coke oven, and that it had among the highest levels of benzene and diesel exhaust in the country after smoking was eliminated. Leanne Shepard is a professor of biostatistics and environmental health at the University of Washington. She wasn't involved in this study, but notes that this type of analysis has its limits.
It's inherent in this kind of data set and analysis that you don't have a direct link between the person's exposure and their outcome.
Still, Shepard says the study's conclusions are reasonable, that cancer prevention efforts should focus on more than just individual smoking control, but also on public policy.
It's another way of showing that It's not just what we do as individuals, but it's also what is in our environment that can impact whether we get cancer or not.
Study co-author Dave Kriebel finds hope in this because action can be taken, like reducing the impacts of diesel exhaust.
These are things you can control. We can do something about diesel exhaust. We can keep trucks out of neighborhoods. We can switch from diesel to electric trucks.
The research received some funding from the Heinz Endowments, which also funds the Allegheny Front. Their paper was published in the journal Environmental Health. For the Allegheny Front, I'm Julie Grant.
There's more about the study at the Allegheny Front. There's a new voice for the people in Asheville. He's a blue puppet with bright red hair. His name is Little Ginger, and you can find him on Instagram. He's a crusading reporter, taking on potholes and local property taxes. Blue Ridge Public Radio's Laura Hackett has more.
David Misnay says he never intended to get into puppetry or social media. His journey with Little Ginger started 12 years ago when he was roped into participating in a friend's puppet show.
I read the script that she wrote and everyone else was doing the puppetry. And then 3 or 4 months later, she just sent me a puppet.
He was living in California at the time, and he says when he got the puppet in the mail, it was an instant connection.
And this box comes and I opened it and there he was. And he was modeled after me. I'm like a big ginger. And I put him on and he looked at me and I looked at him and I just, made this voice and that's what happened. And then he came to life in my hand.
It wasn't long before Misnay began to bring the puppet to work.
It was that kind of California vibe, like in Silicon Valley. Like, we did breathwork ceremony, not ceremonies, but like breathwork classes in the morning on some calls. And there was just an opportunity to bring your best self to work. And so my best self was a puppeteer. And so I would bring it. And the company grew from like 8 to like hundreds of people. And then it might be your first day. And all of a sudden you come to a meeting and there's a puppet talking about the financials.
In 2019, Misnay moved to Asheville and largely transitioned out of the tech industry. After living in the city for a few years, he started to develop some other interests, like local politics.
You come to Asheville, it's beautiful. Like you see the mountains, you notice that there's like a big tourist economy. There's biking and hiking, and then you kind of, if you live here, you peel back the curtain. I'm like, why are there so many potholes on my street? And where's the money for that?
Little Ginger, his alter ego, shares some of Misnay's gripes, so he took to social media with them.
We have a plan for the entire riverfront park system, but the rebuild is in the design phase. They're literally designing designs right now. Things take time.
After chatting with Misnay, I then sat down with Little Ginger for an interview. Okay, great. All right. It's Little Ginger time.
Okay. Thank you, Laura. Hi, I'm Little Ginger. That's Little, for those of you wondering. Yeah, I'm doing great today. I got out of the bag earlier, so I'm, fresh air. It's good.
I asked Ginger if any topic in particular has been grinding his gears lately. One thing he says
is that there's inequality with the property taxes. And right now is the time for assessments, property values. People who bought their homes like 5 years ago and they've gone up a lot. Mm-hmm. But you know what's around here? There's about 5,000 Airbnbs. Are Airbnbs good for Asheville? I don't know. But I know one thing, they're not being taxed appropriately.
Sometimes Little Ginger worries his takes could lead to legal trouble. So he says he leans on ChatGPT from time to time for legal advice.
For specific information, like for example, I might ask, hey, here's a script that I'm going to do for a local supermarket chain that has a lot of abandoned properties around town. If I say this, could they sue me? And then, the AI will help.
No lawsuits yet?
No lawsuits. Again, I'm fabric, not a human, so kind of immune.
Despite legal immunity, being a puppet isn't always carefree. Ginger told me he can't go anywhere without his lint roller.
And every now and then my eye will fall off, either the whole eyeball or the just this part. And so we have a hot glue gun at all times on standby.
That's a good beauty tip.
Yeah. I don't know if it's beauty.
I mean, for Ginger, the eye is the portal to the soul. Window to the soul, right?
Yeah. That's what Do I have a soul? I guess I do.
Whatever soul Little Ginger has, it seems inextricably tied to David Misnay's.
I get a little concerned that people are like, this guy's wacky. He talks to puppets. Like, I believe I'm a sane individual. I could have myself certified, I guess, as sane. But the puppet for me adds joy, adds laughter, and adds this element of like healing for me. I want to be expressed and say the things, and I love when it resonates with people.
Till next time, thanks for joining us as we journey throughout Appalachia. Our theme music is by Matt Jackford. Other music this week was provided by Mary Hott, Paul Loomis, John Blissard, and Hello June. Bill Lynch is our producer. Abby Neff is our associate producer. Our executive producer is Eric Douglas. Kelly Libby is our editor. Our audio mixer is Patrick Stevens. We had help this week from Folkways editor Caitlin Tan. You can find us on Instagram @InAppalachia. You can also send us an email to insideappalachia@wvpublic.org. Visit wvpublic.org/insideappalachia to subscribe to our newsletter and stream all of our stories. Or look for Inside Appalachia on your favorite podcast app. Inside Appalachia is a production of West Virginia Public Broadcasting.